Welcome back to Reliable Sources. I'm Brian Stelter. For what it's worth, Fox News senior judicial analyst Andrew Napolitano is standing by his story, his claim made on Fox several times earlier this week that it was the British that tapped Trump Tower for former President Obama. The Fox News division, though, the news division of Fox News, says it does not have any proof of Napolitano's claims. And Napolitano himself has not commented this weekend. But when the New York Times reached out to the judge, he had a friend call him back, Larry Johnson in particular. Larry C. Johnson was apparently one of Napolitano's sources for the claim. He's a former intelligence officer and State Department counterterrorism official who joins me now from Washington. Larry, thanks for being here.
Hi, Brian. Hey, let's be clear about one thing. I didn't call the New York Times. The New York Times called me, to be precise.
So tell us what happened. Napolitano recommended that the Times call you.
Apparently so, yes.
Okay, and you were one of Napolitano's sources for the story?
Well, not knowingly. I'm part of a discussion group with veterans intelligence professionals for sanity. When you put all the group in one room, you have a complete ideological spectrum from right to left. But we all agree on one thing, that the intelligence operations of this country need to be accountable to the law and need to perform in a way that serves the public and doesn't disserve the public. So we've been writing, we've been critical of President Bush, we've been critical of President Obama, and I'm sure we'll be critical of President Trump. So, you know, we have a bipartisan point of view on this.
And you're saying that because some folks have said, oh, you're a right-winger who's on the fringe, who's making these claims. Is that why you're specifying?
Yeah, well, I can show you the transcript from Rush Limbaugh in 2011 where he accused me of being the Democrat spokesman. I gave a Democrat
Rush has said a lot of nutty things about me too, so I hear what you're saying. But let me ask you about this
Sure.
claim, because my sense is that on Monday, Napolitano says this on TV, says he has intel sources who believe this is true. You're saying you were one of those sources, but you didn't know that Napolitano was going to use you like that.
Yeah, well, apparently what happened is I communicated when Donald Trump tweeted what he did on Saturday 2 weeks ago. The next day I was interviewed on Russia Today. Now, I had known about the fact that the British, through GHQH, were passing information back channel. This was not done at the direction of Barack Obama. Let's be clear about that. But it was being done with the full knowledge of people like John Brennan and Jim Clapper. And I had been told this by two different people I know within the intelligence community, you know, in January. They were very concerned about this because they saw it as an unfair meddling in the politics, but it was a way to get around the issue of American intelligence agencies not collecting.
To be clear, you had this secondhand, so you didn't get this information directly, you were hearing it from others.
I'm hearing it from people who are in a position to know, that's correct. Now, so I posted that on the VIP's discussion board, and apparently one of the individuals there shared that with Judge Napolitano. So I don't know what his other sources are. All I know is what I know. I had known about this before it came out. I think here's the irony of this, Brian. You know, one of the main claims that came out of the report that was issued in early January claiming, oh, Russia was meddling in our election, and one of their main vehicles was Russia Today. I spoke on Russia Today 2 weeks ago. This thing didn't surface until Judge Napolitano brought it out. Now, if Russia Today was so influential...
You're saying Russia Today is not that influential?
I'm telling you that's the truth. I mean, who watches it? The fact that I spoke about it 2 weeks ago and it didn't even surface, it wasn't even a blip anywhere in the U.S. news media. And so I guarantee if people like yourself, who are very informed, very up to speed on things, don't pick up on something like that, you expect a coal miner in Pennsylvania, an auto worker in Michigan, that they're going to be on top of Russia Today? Excuse me, you can't even get it here on Verizon Fios in the D.C. area.
Well, I can get it on Spectrum here in New York, but let me ask you about Russia Today. Why is it appropriate for any American to appear on a Kremlin propaganda network?
Well, it's not a Kremlin propaganda network. You know what the fundamental difference I found in appearing on Russia Today as opposed to CNN? In CNN and on MSNBC and on Fox, remember I was fired from Fox back in my contract was not renewed in 2003 because I had the audacity to go on the Hannity and Combs show in November of 2002 and say going into Iraq would be a diversion in the war on terror. I was told subsequently that Roger Ailes didn't like that, wanted me off air. So I've had quite a bit of experience with media. What I found the difference with Russia Today is they don't do pre-interviews. I've done pre-interviews with your people. I've done pre-interviews in the past when I've appeared on other networks. Just 2 days ago, I did a pre-interview with the BBC. They were going to have me on air, but once they heard what I had to say, they came back and said, oh, no, we don't need to use you now. So
well, I'm glad you're here. I'm just concerned about the sourcing, the credibility here. You say it's not a Kremlin propaganda network. We'll put that to the side. It's funded by Moscow, so that's why I say it that way. But let's put that to the side. I mean, do you think it's appropriate for Judge Andrew Napolitano to go on Fox and say this stuff based on this kind of third or fourth-hand sourcing?
I think the judge should have had a different approach to it. You know, what's ironic is, you know, I was a Fox News analyst through most of 2002 into January 2003. I never spoke to Judge Napolitano then, and really had never spoken to him. I hadn't spoken to him until he actually called me on Saturday. So, you know, there's, I guess, I suppose, a little bit of irony here. But the substance of what he's saying, again, he didn't get it right, accurate either. I'm not saying that the British GHQ was wiretapping Trump's tower, but let's just make a simple point. In the New York Times 2 days ago, they noted that the very first agency to notify that the, quote, DNC had been hacked was GHQ, the British version of the NSA. On March 1st, the New York Times reported that it said the Obama White House was scrambling to get information out about Trump's contacts, and they cited in that article information provided by Dutch and British intelligence. Well, look, Brian, there's only two types of British intelligence. You either got human intelligence from MI6, which is passed to the CIA, or you have GHQ information. So it's not like this is just coming out of nowhere. But again, I make the point, I had heard about it from sources who are within the intelligence community before Trump tweeted. And the issue was
just
more...
Googling the New York Times story, that March 1st story, it was about Obama administration rushing to preserve intelligence about the Russian election hacking. Let me just ask you one final thought here. I mean, given your experience in media, do you think there's an issue for Napolitano that he needs to address? Because he hasn't said anything about this weekend, about who his intel sources were.
Hey, I've gotten out of the business of giving other people like him advice. You know, they don't listen to me anyway. So I think the judge is an honorable man. I think his heart was in the right place. But you know, if you could go back and do this all over, I would have gone back to President Trump when he first tweeted that out. He shouldn't have used the word wiretap. But clearly, I have seen. There's I call it an information operation that's been directed, I believe, directed against President Trump and people like John Brennan and Jim Clapper.
But you say that, you said you believe it, but like, honestly, Larry, my editor is about 30 feet over there in his office right now. If I went over to my editor and said, here's what I've got, Larry says this is what he believes, I would not be allowed to use you as an anonymous source because you don't have first-hand proof.
Sure. Don't, and again, don't take my word for it. I think when we start laying out the evidence of what's been going on throughout the campaign, just a very simple example. When Jim Clapper came out in early October and implied that the 16 intelligence agencies plus his office agreed there was Russian meddling, you knew right away that that was nonsense because there was not a written document that had been circulated in the community. That's the only way you get a community approval. And yet, when they put out the report in early January, only 3 agencies, the NSA, the FBI, and the CIA coordinated on that. They left out the Defense Intelligence Agency, the State Department's Bureau of Intelligence and Research. So when I start seeing games like that being played by people who are in charge of our intelligence services, that tells me they're not doing a professional job, they're playing politics with it, and that concerns me.
I do appreciate your skepticism. Larry, thank you very much for being here.